All right, I have a question for you. Do you ever see a couple at dinner who aren't talking to each other and texting instead? We're going to talk about how texting has affected interpersonal relationships this segment, and my guest is Dr. Candace Cooper-Lovett, and she is a therapist of a New Creation Psychotherapy, LLC.
Yes.
Good morning, number one.
Good morning.
Number two, I mean, how did we get here?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I just think it's just over time with technology and how things have developed over the years. You know, just starting with the late 80s, you remember those big bulky cell phones, and just the development over time between the 80s and the 90s. In the 90s, it got a little smaller. From the 90s to the 2000s, it got a little smaller, and then it incorporated text. Then you started adding, you know, color screens and pictures and everything like that. And then you got social media, and, you know, all those things kind of came about over a series of time, and as a result, people have adapted to it. You know, initially it's like, oh, what's this new thing? But over time, when people start to develop and get to see what it's about, see other people, it's a fad thing too, I believe, over time. You know, when somebody sees something, it's kind of like, oh, I wonder what that's about. Let me try that out too. Next thing you know, it grows and grows and grows. The next thing you know, we have a whole generation and society, a world, where technology and texting is so vast that it definitely affects relationships.
And is it generational? Because I think a lot of people just think it's the young people.
Very true. And, you know, and a lot of young people do adapt to that, and the texting, absolutely. But also the older generation has as well. Now, maybe some of the people who are considering themselves baby boomers, maybe they're still trying to catch up. But honestly, I know some people who are before the baby boomers who's actually like active on texting and, you know, even on Facebook and social media, who's like constantly in with the technology and knowing how to do those things, you know, but definitely a longer generation. But I feel like the older generation is definitely starting to follow.
So how important is it to have conversations like you and I are having now versus, you know, me just sitting here and I'll text you the questions and you can text me back an answer?
Yes. You know, to me, I feel that in person is a little more intimate, and that's something that I feel is missing when you text. Because when you text, it takes the interpersonal connection for me, based on what I know, out of the equation. So you can have an intimate conversation via text, but it's not the same as if when you're in person, you get the expression of the person, you get the body language, just the overall experience, and you feel the energy of the person. You know, I'm big on those types of exchanges. So with text messaging, I feel like it kind of adds a barrier there. You can have it, but to me, it would be hard for me to say that that relationship had the same amount of intimacy as one in which they had connected to each other.
Do you find that intimacy is necessary?
Absolutely. In relationships, not only romantic either. I mean, friendships, you know, family relationships, because intimacy is the thing that draws us closer and helps us to feel connected. And, you know, and based on my worldview and being a marriage and family therapist, I believe that as human beings, we are naturally relational. And I feel like with texting and things like that, it kind of puts that, once again, that barrier there and takes us out of our element. And I feel that in some cases, you know, when people text, they can still become very lonely because there's no social interaction.
Do you think we should sort of set up barriers for ourselves maybe and say, you know, we're going to talk to people face to face for 10 minutes a day and then we will text for 5 minutes a day?
You know, that would be something, you know, especially, you know, because I understand at moments when you're texting, usually you're in a rush. Okay, I can't talk right now. Let me just tell you, blah, blah, and keep it moving. But I think it is important to at least set aside a time like now. You know, if you're at home relaxing, you can just make a phone call or say, hey, you know, let's meet up for lunch or let's meet up for dinner and have a conversation, especially when it comes to having difficult conversations. I would highly suggest to not have difficult conversations via text message. It's just better to do it in person. So set some boundaries with yourself. You know what, let me talk to someone for at least 5 minutes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I learned a lot as well.
Yes.
Well, that is it for this week's edition of Public Affairs on Peach. We'll see you back here next Saturday morning.